Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast and YouTube channel. I'm on a mission to help you cut the time to all the things that are holding you back so you can unleash your entrepreneurial. I'll tell you what, that music is just delicious. It's good. It's not mine. I didn't create it. Welcome to Never Been Promoted. We're live today. We're going to be talking about leadership skills and actually how to power them up. We all could use it. Even if you're a solopreneur, you need leadership skills because you got to create some internal disciplines. And then when you kind of evolve into a business owner, those will become very important. But today, if this is your first day, thank you for coming to the Never Been Promoted show. It's we're all about unleashing your entrepreneur, about cutting that time. See what I did there? It's a metaphor. Look that one up in a dictionary. That's a book about this thick, or it's online. But anyway, it's a metaphor for what you need to do to be successful as an entrepreneur. You really got to cut that tie to all the things that hold you back. The things that, it could be people, it could be this sense of entitlement. It could be excuses, though they sound very valid. They are still excuses, and even some fears maybe of success. Things just you hold on to. You don't need to do that. And we're doing that through, learning from other entrepreneurs and from their journeys and what they're doing in the world today. So if you have been here before, thanks for, sticking here and sticking around and coming back. And if this is your first time, just, have a listen and let's see if it's something that fits your brand or your ideas. Now, if you can take a moment, go to YouTube.com at Never Been Promoted. Subscribe, hit the notifications. We go live a lot. We do a lot of kind of fun content. And if you would like to come on the show or you just don't like the show, you can still DM me through linkedin.com/in/Thomas Helfrich. So here we go. Let's bring Adam on. Enough shameless promotions for me. How are you, Adam?
I am good. Great to see you, Tom.
You as well. We were discussing off camera that it is, I'm in Atlanta, you're in Boston. It seems to be raining in half the United States today, and it's Monday. So if either one of us kind of fall asleep halfway through that, please excuse it. It's okay. You were at a baseball game, I understand, last night?
Yeah, I was watching my beloved Red Sox get a little bit run over by the Yankees. And it was a great time. A little bit of rain, covered, took the young kids, ice cream and baseball helmets, balloon animals, caricatures. It was a good time. It was a
$950 later, you got home.
We mortgaged a new house basically.
Right.
Yeah. And it was funny because it was a game, talk about, ways to work as an entrepreneur. It was a game that was scheduled originally when we bought the tickets for 1:35 in the afternoon, and it got moved into Sunday Night Baseball. So it moved to a 7:10 start time. And, just like things as an entrepreneur you can't predict what happens and what happens outside of your own control, which is 98% of what happens. You just have to roll with it a little bit.
That's right. Now, you didn't get to the game at 1:50. See, that's the difference. You were informed a little bit. But if you had looked.
We had about a 4-day heads up period to realign our plans. So we also had my in-laws, grandma and grandpa were along for the ride. So we had a group of 6 and it worked out. It was okay. We made it through the middle of the 8th inning. And everybody's just a little tired today, but that's not a bad way to start. And even when the sun is hidden by some clouds and rain, that's okay. It'll come back out tomorrow.
Baseball, I find baseball incredibly boring. I mean, I will go to a game for sure. I don't make it past the 7th inning. I remember we're in the World Series against Boston and St. Louis, and I lived in St. Louis at the time. Even then, I was like, should we get ahead of the traffic? It's like, I know we're about to win the whatever it's called, World Series, the Super Bowl. But should we get on the road? I mean, because there's gonna be a lot of cars. Like we're gonna get stuck in that parking garage for like 2 hours, and I'll probably have to pee.
Right.
Here nor there. You're let's talk about you a little bit. So you're well, before we do, I always try to ask some kind of like ground setting fun question. I think the one I want to ask, I got asked this weekend at a 30-year high school reunion. So just to date me a bit, what are you most proud of in the last 6 months you've accomplished?
Oh, in the last 6 months. This is going to be one that I'll probably talk more about, but I have a book that I wrote that I drafted beyond 6 months ago, and it's approved in layout. I just got the actual full jacket cover mock-ups over the weekend. I'm starting to record the audiobook version starting in 2 weeks. That is something I'm immensely proud of that I never thought I could do. Getting 45,000 words down into a format that actually feels as something tangible, that's a wild accomplishment. On the flip side,
that's a great one. I mean,
I'll tie that though, Tom, with also our oldest daughter is turning 8 on Sunday. I'm proud that we've been able to keep her successful and alive for 8 years. That's an accomplishment in its own right.
she's your first?
She's our first. Yes.
Yeah. It's funny because you're right, because you're guessing. They don't realize that you don't know what you're doing either. But that is basically like consulting and entrepreneurship, right? Like you only have to know like 1% more than a person around you for them to know. But occasionally our kids, I mean, we have a 14, about to be 15, 12, and 9-year-old, and occasionally we don't know. We're first time parents as well. Like you guys, we're cutting our teeth with you. And our youngest gets away with everything. Like, no, we just know what to let her get away with now. We just didn't let you guys get away. It's fun to. It's not that we're just letting her get away. We just know that she can get away with that without penalty. So,
yeah. Well, and I think that's part of how you have to forgive yourself a little bit. Also, it's tied up into not knowing what you're doing, but you give yourself a little bit of grace as you back away from not understanding how to navigate every situation that happens, or walking away from your own sort of the way that you're made up, and knowing that they're different people and they're each individual humans in the world navigating to make this world what it is in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll segment that to what we're doing here. Like as an entrepreneur, you do need to forgive yourself for screwing up. Even if you've been through it before, there is no, you're on the hook for the playbook that does or doesn't exist. And that's the whole point of being a leader in that position. Even if you're a solopreneur, right? Like you're just going to have to make the best decision that you have. Just make a decision, right? And move forward and learn from it. And but talk about what you're doing. Maybe set up, give me like the 60 seconds on what you're working on, what the book's about, but also then back up to kind of how you got there a bit, and you just kind of share with us so we can get your creds established here. So we should listen or not. Let's establish. Should we listen to this, guys? We got to understand here.
Let's do it. So I mean, as you can see here, energy coach is what I call myself, but the bigger history of that is I spent over 20 years of a nonlinear marketing career working across enterprise scale companies and startups, leading teams of 20 plus people, working with clients pending upwards of tens of millions of dollars down to establishing a plan for driving tens of millions of dollars of revenue. That's where I come from. But I have an energy coaching practice. As much as I would love to say that's about mystical stones and sorcery, and I've had this business for 3 years, maybe in 10 years I'll bring some of that into the business. It's been about how I've always managed teams and led teams and grown practices and worked across organizations, seeing that when I start to partner with people, their energy level starts at a baseline, and partway through the conversation, it starts to raise. And that's really driven through giving them that energy. But then also, we touched on this early, it's about accountability. That's what really drives me. The book is a big piece of the path of how I coach as an energy coach also. It's called Make Your Own Glass Half Full, and it's about using the power of optimism and autonomy to drive yourself on a path to success. So that's the path I've been on in my own career. This is the second business I've built across my career. Again, I've worked for every scale of a small startup to a large scale company. But also I've been laid off twice within that corporate career. So I've built that path towards resilience. And then I'll talk more about this when the book comes out. There are other challenges I've faced across my life, but those have all allowed me to figure out how to realize that the sun is always behind the clouds. If it's a cloudy, rainy day like today, the sun is still there. It's going to come back. And then it ties to entrepreneurship and how I coach my coaching clients with the fact anyone who's an entrepreneur, solopreneur, starting a business, they have a vision of where they want to go. And it's not necessarily about taking a winding path. If you're clearly aligned on what you're trying to achieve through building this business and you stay resilient on that path, that trajectory can go down. But then if you stay going forward, eventually you're going to be able to iterate and learn and grow and continue to or build that success path. It just takes time, resilience. And one of the things that I always have to remind myself of my coaching clients as well is the fact that progress takes a lot longer than you think it's going to take. It takes that resilience. And you see that with, to tie it back to having kids again, that's also about knowing that if you stay on a path moving in a certain direction, eventually it's going to pay off, whether you think they're listening or not. So that's where I come from, though.
The cheesy statements like the dawn, darkest before dawn, but
Right.
like a roller coaster, which is what entrepreneurship can feel like at times. You do very much so climb slowly,
Right.
And you can fall really fast, and that
Right.
part sucks. But you're right. The sun is always out there, and you sometimes just got to realize that it's there and it's working. And just like in like your kind of metaphor there, you do need cloudy days. Sometimes you need it to be overcast a little just to appreciate when it is sunny and when it is dark. And as a I will challenge you one thing. I don't think every entrepreneur, one of the biggest problems I think a lot of entrepreneurs have is they had a reason to become entrepreneurs, which is usually I don't want a boss. That's like the number one. And what they don't have sometimes is a vision of where to go with it, which causes them to go about a mile wide and less than a quarter inch deep. And that creates the hype cycle of, hey, I'll try this. That's hard now. Let me try this. That's hard now. And when you do that, you find a lot of failure in a way that you're not learning from, only you're learning how to abandon what could have been a good idea. Right. So maybe, and I would think you'd seen the same. You've probably felt the same. I've seen it, done it myself, tons of it. From what you're teaching, when you see this, doesn't seem like you have a vision. Seems like you're doing too many things at once. What do you do? Like, what's your recommendation for something like that? Because that's where a lot of people get incredibly stuck and quit, and then now they're just in despair.
I mean, part of it comes back to how you set that up. It's not about the smaller goals. It's about building the systems to work that those goals get created within. That's one way to work around it. But I think even with someone who is on the third iteration of being an entrepreneur and building a business, or someone who's building their first business or becoming an entrepreneur for the first time, it's important to go back. And I love to work with my own coaching clients and use tools like the one that's so well known these days, Ikigai, which is the Japanese concept for the reason for being. And that ties together what you're good at, what the world needs, what you love, and what you can get paid for. And then as you work towards the center of that Ikigai, that gets so closely tied to what makes you up that it's transformative. And I think if you've failed and you've gone through and tried something and you want to move to the next thing, if you look inward, you can find that center of the Ikigai to work as a path towards where you go in the future. It's going to allow you to build those BHAGs, right? Those big, hairy, audacious goals of what you work towards that then break down into smaller goals that actually you look at from a 6-month, 9-month, year. Those are the tangible things.
I find if you're not getting some of your goals down to almost, I need to do this by Friday, and then today I'm going to do this 5 things, you won't get any, like, especially when you're first starting. Like, you have to be, my number one thing is that, like, you got to quit wasting time. And I know I still do plenty of it with playing a game on my phone, or like, sometimes you need the mental break, but sometimes that 13-15 minutes you had turned into an hour because somebody canceled me, and you're like, oh, I guess I'll keep playing. So you can't do that. You got to, like, let me go work on my offers. Let me go watch this tutorial on something. when you're helping somebody set through there, I think the other part people say is, well, if I make this goal, what happens if it's the management of that goal? Because you're making sometimes a goal without the power of knowledge. You're in this cone of uncertainty and you're way out here going, I think I want this. How do you coach through that when people go, I don't think that's the goal anymore? And they've done all these things, they made all these plans, and then you get this despair kind of cycle going on. You're always like, oh my God, what am I doing? And so how do you coach through that, or what do you recommend? I mean, you said processes, but like actually get into the weeds a little on what that means.
I mean, it's about it ties almost a little bit towards, coaching is so closely tied to therapy, and they're not the same. They complement each other. I actually tie in mentorship to be a piece of that sort of puzzle, but the coaching gets into really asking the right questions for why they're making the decisions that they've made. It's active listening, and it's probing with questions to understand where the business started, what the origin story, where they come from is so innately important as well, because it really ties into where they've been in the past and what they can help deliver. But it's having the time and the active listening is insanely important for opening up that path towards where they come from and guiding them to where they need to go. The other piece that I keep in mind, throughout my corporate career, I always loved working with the difficult clients who it took, months and months of chipping away to build that really deep relationship and that great partnership. Those were the relationships that I love to work on more than any other. Maybe I'm a little bit of a masochist in that sense, but I like that challenge because I'm built on, I believe everyone in this world has a superpower. My superpower is networking and being able to build these really close relationships. I've done that for 20 plus years, but it pays off so much more fully if you put that work into the relationship. So I like to challenge the clients that I work with, and it's about getting close with them, asking questions, and then waiting for them to unwrap the layers of the onion so that you can start to work to rebuild the framework that's going to lead to success.
My superpower is wrecking any meeting if allowed to. So good at it. It's such a good corporate skill when you're unprepared all the time and you're like, I mean, I was masterful with it.
I mean, it's amazing working with entrepreneurs or even micro business owners who they step in with the acute focus, which I say sometimes can be blinders of the business that they're building, and joining as a partner who has a different perspective and can help them stay accountable to what they're building can open up the mindset towards flexibility of how they change and pivot within their own business. That's what I love to work on, opening up with clients as well. It's being a second set of eyes. It's almost working in that Venn diagram mindset of, we can have this little bit of overlap, but there's so much more that we're both we have such a unique experience set or perspective on. We can do more better together.
Yeah. Did you say more better? I think you said
we can do increase
more better.
More better.
That's just me. See, I'm wrecking a meeting. I'm wrecking my own meeting now. Damn it.
We're raising the entire ocean. It's not just, together. Working together is a big piece of aligned energy and how that comes to play out with clients as well.
Worker better together.
Right.
Higher.
But it's also, you talked a little bit about this. It's about calendar management. Even as an early entrepreneur, it's about putting those systems in place that allow you to use your time effectively, knowing when you work in enabling a flow state, right? That's what we all dream of doing. And if you can bring in tools, whether it's the Pomodoro technique that so many companies have iterated on, or simply color coding your calendar to certain things that you need to get done that tie back to those goals. If you need to spend, you block your calendar out. You need to spend 20% of your week doing, business development outreach and understanding and networking. You need to do 40% of pitching clients. You need to do the rest, towards delivery of building a product. Putting that on your calendar to keep yourself accountable so you can see what you're working through. And I've got a deep bench of tools that can help enable that depending on what the right fit is for my coaching clients. That can help you as an entrepreneur not have that I'm guilty of shiny object syndrome. That's what I always think back to. I'm a marketing person innately. I love to bring tools in, but then I get tool overload because of shiny object syndrome. Those guardrailing systems can really help, from calendar management down to even some tools I've stumbled across about note taking that really help you focus. And focus is hard, and it's hard to do that even as a coach with clients working around the globe. But that's where bringing them in and having constant communication, transparency, flexibility in terms of when we catch up, how we communicate, what works best for them. Do I throw them into my Slack community and then we can just DM back and forth there? Do we text? Do we email? Do we have to hop on informal, calls every once in a while just to say, hey, have you done this? Or what do you need help with? It's the role that I love to play based on the background of where I come from.
So let's focus on maybe the solopreneur, the early, the people that are small, and it's mostly they're working around their brand, their knowledge set. Let's say it that way. And from a leadership skill standpoint, what is it that maybe you see as usually underdeveloped? That absolutely can't be, but it's like a blind spot. You don't even know you should have.
Right.
And what do you do about it?
I mean, one of the biggest ones is you've got this nebulous idea that you've started with, and it's a great idea, but you don't have the right systems around yourself to actually implement the idea. You want to build something that for instance brings 25 million people into some app that you're trying to build. If you can't get into the early stages of that with a clear ideal customer profile, ICP, you're never going to know how you drive to the right customers. That's maybe a convoluted way to answer that question, but it's getting towards designing your ICP and thinking, David Epstein with range, right, talks about being a generalist.
Mm-hmm. Any
entrepreneur, especially as they're starting as a solopreneur, needs to have that generalist mindset, but also have that deeply thought out ICP of the customer that they're trying to reach. And those two things pair together to answer those questions and put them on a path towards that success for the business they build.
And I've been through this, and I know if you are doing some forms of marketing, either be content or DMs or email or whatever, and email is usually more specific because you have some ICP you're trying to target.
Right.
But when you feel like the customers just kind of fall out of the cracks and they come to you, it's great because you're getting a customer, but then you're like, I really don't know where to put my marketing dollars. and I'm there on one of our service lines. It's stuff we do for LinkedIn. We have a couple $1 billion companies. We have a couple, people just starting. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know. People just discover my profile and I'm like, and that's the intentional way of how we do it. But then sometimes I'm like, I can't really put a marketing investment behind it. So, it's what you're describing is interesting because, one of the things we've added to our service line is verifying other marketing agencies' ability to deliver. And the reason is because it's the biggest problem I run into as an agency, and I see every other agency person out there. And so now I'm like, I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, wow, I know exactly who that ideal customer profile is. It's a marketing agency that's doing 1.2 million or less. They have a small team. Like, they're in the US. They want to go to the next level. They want to get out of their personal brand, but they always struggle against the next level. That one, I've got it nailed. I can actually download an email list and start, and call those people, put them on a podcast. The other stuff we do truly is like, I don't know. Like, I couldn't tell you. And here we are 3 years in, we've doubled revenue every year, but I couldn't tell you how. I just know we put out, I think, okay content, and we know they're typically founders and people who need help, that they find us, and it's like, and that's great. But man, I'll tell you what, that's a hard, if you're in a business and you feel that, if you're out there right now and you're like, oh my God, I don't know how my customers find me outside of even word of mouth.
Right.
You have to do exactly what you just said. You have to really dive into that ideal customer profile. And if you look at your existing customers and they're all over the place, then it's probably what we have found is it's a personality.
Right.
It's somebody who's sick of spam. It's somebody who's been burnt by an agency. And so we market those storylines into our content because that's who we're attracting. That's how I figure. I was like, these people don't have any commons except they just got burnt and they need someone they can trust.
Right. I mean,
So anyways.
I can go back into my corporate career. I spent the last, quarter of my corporate career working in a pair of, large enterprise scale B2B cybersecurity company or internet tech company. And we ran into that and how we were, building our pipeline for the company. And it's tough as a solopreneur and entrepreneur, but there's knowledge that comes from working in that enterprise scale organization because we broke those customer profiles down across that realm of the clients that we bring in. It was a weird company to work in because it's Akamai Technologies, right? It's been around for 25 years. It was an engineering-led organization. We had a pretty deep marketing and sales slice to the organization, but they didn't need the marketing and to fill the pipeline for the company. We got so much traffic due to awareness. We also had a great threat response team, of course, so you could come in and hit my, I have a threat right now. How can you help me? That would fill the pipeline for the organization. But through the marketing and through the sales teams that I worked on, we started to get into how do we find those right customers? And we had to ladder them up, not only, as you were just saying, Tom, on the scale of the potential spend, right? There's the total addressable market and then the sales addressable market. You break those down to enterprise, mid-level business and small business. You have to have different ways you talk to each of those organizations from a selling and implementation standpoint. But within each of those, we talked about personas of the buyers. It was if we're talking about a cybersecurity product, you've got anywhere from a CISO, a chief information security officer, down to some organizations have like a junior security engineering person on the team. Those personas you have to talk to differently. And that doesn't change. That changes even more than how you talk to different customers based on the scale of the size of the organization and their potential what they could spend on our products.
Yeah. And when you're smaller enterprise, you really do have to watch where you put your money because nothing will burn your money quicker than ads. And
right.
When we're doing strategy with organizations, I will tell you the first thing we tell people to do is if you're struggling at all, you need to cut your ads. And the reason I say that is your landing pages are probably messed up, your value proposition, your ICP is probably messed up. Like you don't do any of that stuff until it is a known thing.
Right.
And you can then you can test your ABs. Then you can test your copy. If you're guessing on the ICP at that point, nothing's working right. Like your numbers are going to be so dismal that there's no way. Like, I mean, you'll get lucky, I guess is my point. Right. So if you're in that spot now, stop, take the time, hire a consultant, and with that money instead, they get that right.
Right. Well, and that ties back to the philosophy that I followed in building my own business, my own career with my coaching clients. It's that prioritization of relentless curiosity tied with continuous learning. It's being flexible and nimble. And of course, as you're early as an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur, you've got that initial ICP of the customers you want to hit. You play that out, you prove it out. Sometimes it can align with that original ICP and you iterate on it. Other times you need to iterate and it's the flip side of the coin of what that original ICP is. It's being open-minded and flexible to understanding that, knowing, setting yourself up for saying I'm going to cross-check this every 6 months or every 12 months and see if my initial ICP is lining up with where my customers are actually coming. then you start to maybe unwrap some learning of how you adjust your ICP, and it can work in your marketing activity, but it also can work in how you design your products. And that doesn't have to be a tech product. That can be any product that you're putting out in the world.
Yeah.
It's
Or service, especially.
it's
Let's talk about your book a little bit. Tell me the premises of it, the motivation. Is it legacy? Like, talk to me. Take a few moments to talk about how you wrote it. Like, just dive in on that a bit.
sure. I've it's been a crazy process. I think, some of the stats out there in the world of writing a book, most people have these ideas for the books, and they don't ever make the progress on doing it. I actually stumbled across a book writing accelerator program. That's a whole separate episode. We could probably talk about that process. But it's this idea that I've had in the back of my head that, we're in a world that's dominated by these external pressures and expectations that, and it's about how optimism and autonomy as an alternative can revolutionize and give you resilience, and also tie in the grace you need to navigate any challenge across career, life, etc. And it's been informed by my own path. It's not only being, as I mentioned earlier, I think being laid off twice in my corporate career. The
Is that
first
all? You're such a rookie. The
no,
second one's the hardest, but
it's wild. It's wild.
the first one you could justify, and the second one, you're like, I'm assuming this. I've never been divorced, but I guess if I got divorced twice, I'd be like, I think it's probably me at this point. You get laid off the second time, you're like, you think it's you. The third one, it is, and you just start owning that
Right.
every time. So when you get to like 6 deep, where I am,
Right.
then you're like, I have mastered the art of 18 months.
You know what though? It's when it happens the first time and you step out. I was working at Microsoft the first time it happened. It was due to, making too much money on a spreadsheet in a sales organization, and they needed to cut some fat, right?
Right.
And I stepped out of that. I write about this in the book. I stepped out of, we were in a WeWork at that point in time because it was cheaper to work in a WeWork than it was to rent corporate office space for Microsoft. That's a weird fun fact that can show up on Jeopardy at some point in time. But I stepped out onto the street. It was a beautiful August, summer day. Called my wife, said, "You'll never, believe what happened." And,
Hey, what are you doing?
she said, "Well, so you've tripped or something like that." And then I was like, "No, that's not what happened." And she goes, "You got laid off." And I was like, "Yep." Hopped on the subway back to my house here in Boston, took the dog for a nice walk around a Frederick Law Olmsted designed park, and reset myself. And then I built a boutique marketing agency that was just me, myself, and I, pounding pavement here in Boston. It was that understanding of when something like that happens, it's going to be okay. And it's again, it's that brief, downward trajectory. But if you stay resilient on that path forward, eventually you're going to lift your way out of it. And I'm really a true believer that, hi, we're two, white men on this meeting right now. Anyone, no matter your background or experience, can take these ideas of optimism and autonomy as tools, no matter what they've been built with, and use them to drive a different path for success in the world. I'm deeply ingrained in the trying to make change in venture capital and, capital investment with diverse and underrepresented founders. I'm passionate about trying to bring equity and justice to the world in that space. I don't push, but through a lot of that equity work, or Ikigai work, and that center of who people are work, I see a lot of people who are either deeply experienced executives who've gone through a career, and they're trying to do more things that help the world become a better place.
Right.
And that's the ultimate change that I'm trying to bring through my coaching practice, through writing this book. It's getting those people who just need a little bit more. As a white male, I've for years have said, I wish I could bottle up the confidence that I get from that position in the world and hand that to different people. This is the way that I've tangibly figured out I can actually do that thing that I'm actually not able to do. And it's building networks. It's diving into those networks, from any entrepreneur standpoint, though, the way you're going to build your business is having a diverse network of people to help support you. It's not necessarily about who you bring in as your first hire or partner within the business. I think it's about, figuring out who the right board of advisors you can bring in that are people who've known you for either, through former jobs or earlier in your life to help guide you, can tie together also with having that fully optimized human who has a therapist, solving for things that happen, helping to work on things that happened in the past, a coach who's working with you, or a mentor rather, who's working with you on a daily basis in an aligned industry to help keep you motivated and moving forward, and then a coach helping you move to the future. That's the fully optimized human. Board of advisors pairs nice for an entrepreneur or a solopreneur because you've got trusted people that as you start to say, iterate on that ICP, you can send that to them just as a second set of eyes and say, does this make sense for how you know me and what I'm trying to build?
Yeah. You're, I use this analogy sometimes, is, there's not an athlete on the world who's like, that doesn't have at least one coach, if not a health coach, plus
Right.
some type of game, personal therapist for the relationship, maybe one for like, the sportsman mentality. If you don't think you need at least a mentor, you are falling behind.
Right.
Like you're in your own box. And unless, even Elon Musk has mentors and people that he goes and gets advice on. And you may not like Elon, but you can't
Right.
deny his success. Right.
Right.
And for whatever reason, you might think it's legal or not legal. Maybe you're a Trump or a Biden or whoever fan. They all have advisors. They all have people that coach them through things. And either it's informal or it's paid or whatever it is, you have to have one. And I say that, and right now I don't have a coach. And I've never had one because I've actually have really never found someone that I have said, hey, I'm going to go make that investment because I truly believe for the thing that I'm struggling with, they can solve.
Right.
So I'm not even needing my own advice. I know I need it, but I'm like, so what I do instead is I started a podcast so I could do micro mentoring and not have to pay for it. If anything, have people pay me for it. That would be brilliant.
But that ties back to that board of advisors way of thinking, right? Because you're having conversations. I've always believed that the more conversations I have with people outwardly in the world, the more I can reflect back and learn more about myself. So as you're an entrepreneur or a founder who's building a business, whether it's potential clients or people who are giving you feedback. And again, from working with difficult clients, I love getting tough feedback so much more than I do out of someone saying, this looks great, move ahead. That's perfect. I'd rather have someone go, here are 5 points of why this isn't right. And then I can reflect back and learn from that.
Right.
And
now, when you're building your business, so when you're building a business, it'll start off on some direction, and whatever that is. And I'll not autobiography, but I'll give you our example is that it starts off with, hey, we're going to do content. We had access to OpenAI's, what became GPT, right? Years before anybody else. And so we were using, like, oh my gosh, we're going to go build this company called Instaurel.ai, right? We're like, it's going to be this. And then you learn along the way that a couple releases of what was Chat GPT come out, and you're like, oh man, if this when this goes public, no one should be doing this. But so you pivot, and then you pivot to something else, and then you realize, oh wow, what kind of business do I want? I'm in every meeting, I'm in every customer interaction. Oh my God, I'm exhausted. Then you start thinking, well, what other problem can I solve for where I'm not a month-to-month service, I'm a yearly service, and you start pivoting to what your lifestyle and what you've learned. Now, if you're not doing that, or maybe you got lucky. If you got lucky, that you can come on the show and tell us how you got lucky. Most people have to figure that out, but if you ignore that, you burn yourself out. So when you're coaching, is that often? I know I'm leading the witness here, but is that often an issue where someone brings you in, you're like, you're just burnt out because your model's wrong, and then you're like, it's not starting a whole new business, but you're going to have to pivot some pretty big pieces of it to get away from what you're feeling. So can you talk about that motion? Because I see a lot of entrepreneurs in that where they're like, I am just 10 years into this and toasted, but they don't, anyway. So talk about that when you see this kind of, I did it wrong.
I mean, I go back, I've been coaching 80 small businesses, micro businesses over the last year. And these are businesses that were recipients of a grant, prize and this coaching came with them. But I'm answering this question in maybe a little bit of a roundabout way because I think it's important. I've worked with all of these different clients who, go from a fast casual pasta restaurant opening in Philadelphia to a indoor doggy daycare human cafe in Portland, Oregon. Widely diverse set of clients to get a chance to work with. But I've learned with some of these how I've learned really, really deeply about how some of these businesses operate by starting at that, understanding their origin story. And for instance, that indoor, doggy daycare cafe is closing down. And it's been a struggle over the last 8 years to run the business. It's closing down because there's things happening with real estate and the building got bought and the lease didn't get renewed. But that's a tired entrepreneur who's been in that. And there's someone who comes from they were a physical therapist for 20 years. And then they stumbled into opening this business and they have to kind of walk away from it. But the short answer that I'm working towards is it's about knowing that each of those pieces of your past informs where you go next into your future. And even with, in my coaching, when I work with clients who are in a corporate career, even a little bit different from entrepreneurial track, I have this tool that I use. It's a career sidewalk. I'm here in Boston. I'm on the second floor for the past, few years of working at this desk. I've looked down on the sidewalk, below me, and you think about resumes. Resumes are a linear way to read your history, or even a LinkedIn profile is a linear way to read your profile. This career sidewalk takes that to a different place of navigating the meandering career sidewalk tile by tile. And it's not necessarily about the specific role, but it's the experience within each role you've built. It's applicable to entrepreneurs as well, because you learn through each step of that process. But the important piece of it is the last tile of it it's about where you want to go next. And it's that iteration. And again, it gets into that curiosity and continuous learning. It's taking the inputs that you have from the business where you start, use those as tangible pieces. And then as a coach, I step in and help to digest that and provide, poke some corners on it, or provide feedback, or say, hey, I would think about it from a slightly different angle, or I would add this question that you're thinking about and try to answer it. Not to go back to kids again, of course, as well. Even with Ikigai, I've had some clients who've struggled in figuring it out for themselves. And I've said, well, let's change this a little bit. Why don't you hand your kids a blank Ikigai sheet with your name on it and see what they fill out on it? Those are people who you've influenced in a lot of ways. And I think they can help you uncover what really makes you up if you're struggling with what that is when you're starting. Provide some interesting reflective insights that at least you're not going to take it and copy it as your own, but can help to influence how you design your own path towards where you go. So, but again, it's kids, it's a board of advisors. Each of these pieces as a coach as well come in to provide that helpful energy and accountability towards iteration and growth ultimately.
Yeah. You were, well, let me ask you differently. So, as we can just conscious of time and stuff too, and I think the conversation we have has been very helpful for understanding that, where leadership in particular, processes, systems, but also people in your life are so critical to success. I think we've covered that pretty well. But if there was one question I should have asked you and I didn't, what would that question have been?
What really drives me in life?
What really drives you? Besides the Boston Red Sox winning another World Series.
You know what? I'm going to say it's not the Boston Red Sox. I have, when our first child was born, we canceled cable. Like we don't watch a lot of sports anymore. We don't really keep on it. It's music. Music is what drives me. I think it can change your mood. It can change your mindset. A lot of people don't necessarily want to listen to music all day, but it's what drives me on it every single day. And it's a broad scope of music. It's, it's really what pushes me to become bigger, better, and build my own energy up, because I can't be my own energy coach. That's what I provide to other people. That's what I plug in to power myself. And as I help people, I like to think about, imagine yourself in a dark bedroom in the middle of the night, and there's no light within it, and you wake up, something jolts you awake, and you're trying to find a cord to plug a light in. I'm the one who helps you find that cord, get your hand grasped around it, and then helps guide into that outlet that ultimately plugs in that energy and allows you to recover from waking up in a panic state in a dark room.
Just to be clear, you're the guy in the room that unplugged the cord. Then there's a creepy dude in the room. Not creepy, but it'd be creepy. And then they're like, I can't. And then all of a sudden a hand touches them in the pitch black, helps them plug it back. And you're like, I'm here to help. And they're going to be like, holy, who the?
That's the parallel universe chapter in the book of,
okay.
Make your own glass half full. That'll be a thriller that comes out in, let's say, 10 years.
That was my glass half empty metaphor. So he's a stalker. Great. What's the chance there's 2 stalkers on here? Wow. The odds. All right. You talk about ICP. So who is it that should get a hold of you, and where do you want them specifically to go do that?
I love to work with, I mentioned this early, it's emerging leaders and executive leaders. It's a kind of strange pairing there, but emerging leaders who are early in the entrepreneurial journey. My success metric for myself is if I can change the path for 5 young entrepreneurs to build these really successful big businesses that transform the world, that's when I've done what's good for the world. So more of those young, hungry, open to learning entrepreneurial founders. Then the second sort of ICP there are these deeply experienced executive founders who are trying to make a pivot from where they've historically been in their career, and helping to enable them and keep that energized and on a path to success. Across both of those buckets, though, it's about these transformative relationships. It's great to work with clients for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. I would love to continue to work with clients and make multi-year transformational guidance that helps them not only in maybe the first step or the second step of where they're going, but ultimately in a longer transformative path towards bigger goals and achievement in the world.
That's great. I got up there, Adam W. Barney, BARNEY.com. Go check out Adam's site. It's great. Adam, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure as always.
You too. I'm going to put you into the, I don't think it's the blue room. I referenced the color behind me. It's more periwinkle, but I'm going to put you in the periwinkle room. There's no snacks or anything. I ate them all, but I'll be right back with you. Thank you for coming. See you in a minute.
Cheers.
Cheers. Hey, for everyone who came to this point in the show, thank you for listening and watching and being a part of our community. If you have any questions, for Adam, just get a hold on him at adambarney.com. You can also check him out at LinkedIn at Adam W. Barney, and get his book. It's Make Your Own glasshalffull.com. That's a mouthful, but if you just spell that out and put it on there, you'll get it. But thank you. If this was your first time here, I really appreciate you getting here. And if you've been here before, you rock. Our mission is to help you cut the tie to all the stuff that's holding you back, right? Unleash that entrepreneur, get out there, and just be great. Thanks for listening, watching. And if you like it, go to youtube.com, try the subscribe button. If you want to get some notifications, hit that bell. But thank you so much. Till next time, take care. Thanks.